Hello everyone. So today's word of the day is. I thought I'll go with drum roll, but I don't think I can do drum roll. But yeah, that's all the drum roll you can get from me. So I'm very bad at drum roll. Today's word of the day is consolation, or coming from console. So yeah, that's the word of the day today. I found something. I found it philosophically quite interesting, because while searching for the roots of the word consolation and while tracing its roots and where it does come from, when I went through Oxford Reference Dictionary, I found it quite interesting to see. I mean, I got more into the concept, because we know in literature consolation and the concept of consolation in grief coming from Greek times. So that interested me, and I went into another journey altogether. And I'll mention a little bit of it. But now, word of the day, let's focus on that and let's trace from where it comes from and how interesting this word is. Just give me a minute. I'll zoom you into my notebook. Yes, as you can see, consolation, that which consoles, which I'm sure everyone knows, so this is very easy. So it comes from consolation. I don't know the French pronunciation, consolation or consolation. It comes from Old French, which means solace and comfort. Around 11th century circa, then it's modern French, consolation, and then from modern French again. So obviously French. So from modern French, it goes to Latin, consolationum, with the nominative consolatio, which means a consoling comfort. And it's more or less, I think, the usage was more or less on death and grief, and how you console someone when they go through that period. So more on that later. But it comes, so this consolatio comes from the stem consolari, which means again offering solace, gets divided into com and solari. Com, as we know, now this is the most interesting part for me, because not only am I interested in interested in the trajectory of the word, but I'm also interested in how and what roots and prefixes and suffixes it comes from. Like enraptured, so en is obviously enclosure, inside the circle, periphery, circumferences. So then how it gets added to English literature and then English language, and we have all enclosed, enraptured, and now I can't remember anymore n right now. Wow, encircle, yes, encircle. So I can remember all the basics words right now. That's amazing. So coming from com, which means with, together. So again, a community, um, community, compact, com again, my memory, the moment when I need my memory to be there, it just disappears. So coming from the Latin with, together, which has an archaic classical Latin form, which is cum, cum. Now its behavior, so before vowels and aspirates, it is reduced to co. So very interesting, com becomes co. Before g, it forms cognitive, con or con connotation. Before I, it forms call, collie again, call, collie, Colin. Oh God, why can't I remember words? No wonder I have to do this. Before I, it forms call. Before R, it forms core. Correction. This I remember. Correction. Correction. Again, see, I'm amazing. Before C, D, J, N, Q, S, T, V becomes con. And so this when we talk about consolation, just a second, my pen doesn't want to stay at one place. When we talk about consolation, what is interesting for me is, because this is something new that I learned, I thought the word would be divided in con and solation or solari, but it's not con, it's actually com. So it's amazing how com, again, so as it says that in presence of, I think, s, it becomes con. So com becomes con when it's added before c, d, j, n, r, q, s, t, v. So interestingly, I'll try to find out these words, but yeah, and how which words are there that under j, I mean goes from com becomes con. Okay. Solari around circa 13th century, which comes from solas, which is again old French, solas, which is Latin word, old French, and then from old French the Latin word solas, which means pleasure, and solatium, which has a past participle solatus. So very interesting, at least, of solari. So the root word is basically this. Actually, this word has traveled a long way in through multiple modes, or has traveled a long way, not through multiple modes, but has traveled a long way. So the root word comes from slay, which means to reconcile, and this word is, so this one also goes back to Greek, which is Greek hilaros. So source origin also around 14th century circa and 15th century circa. We know it means to make solace, which is still there in Middle English, and but in Middle English, and it reminded me of Chaucer and the things Chaucer used to write. It especially Canterbury Tales. So yeah, it has sexual connotations. So solace now and solace then. So sexual connotation. And solacious is an adjective form, which means pleasantly agreeable. And common, according to Oxford English Dictionary, it became the common usage that we have right now is around 1500 to 1650. So yeah, that's all for this one. So however, I found it very interesting because consolation, although the meaning more or less remains the same except the middle English connotation, but it has traveled a lot. So consolation from modern French, from old French to modern French to Latin consolatium to com plus solari, and then com changes and goes through certain words, and solari is around circa 1300, and then Latin solas, and then obviously it goes to Greek slay, and then so the source and origin is around Middle English. So pretty interesting, like not it might not be like enraptured where the meaning has changed a bit. Yes, the meaning here, connotation has changed a bit, but it's more like it has come from a really long way. So consolation has traveled a lot. Yes. Now I'll go a bit into about the philosophical concept of the word consolation. And yeah, so basically, if we look through Oxford, I was referring to Oxford Reference Dictionary, and what I found interesting is, like, consolation, as I think Merriam-Webster, it talks about consolation prize, and one consolation is also architectural table, although I think, yes, it is. I am sure it is, but I'll just check because I want to be sure. So it's architectural table. I think I'm definitely, or console. Yes, sorry, not consolation. Console is architectural table. So it comes from the whole console thing, console architecture. But consolation, again, more or less it remains the same. But as I was saying, that philosophically the concept of consolation is interesting. I mean, the word itself is interesting because it has traveled a really long way, and the concept, basically, because for me, when I want to know the words, I want to know how and in what context were they used in the different centuries. So how far it has traveled, and yeah, I think I've how far it has traveled, and how long, how people have used that. So I think yeah, so the earliest reference is basically to comfort those. It's a very beautiful word, consolation, console, but I don't know whether it holds a similar beauty right now or not, especially when I think we have added it to the word prize, consolation prize. So sometimes it feels very trivial and mundane, but the goal is to give back the beauty to these words. So if it has become trivial and mundane. So the practice of offering basically comfort to those who have been afflicted by grief, as you see in earliest Greek literature, and later and that's my neighbor. So later, under the twin references of rhetoric and philosophy, it's very interesting. A consolatory literature began to develop, and that continues through the whole of Greco-Roman tradition. And it took a number of forms, and philosophers have written treatises on it, obviously on death, how to escape death. So again, consolation as a word, I know we do use it with consoling someone, but I think maybe it's just me, but uh, to have I didn't think that it would have such a depth in such a way. So Greek sites voted consolation for the ones who've been deceased, so death in that way. So consolation proper is regularly associated with sympathy, as you give it, or eulogy that is there. Normally grief, and so basically consolation, letters of consolation were also during Greek that time, during that again during that period of time. So letters of consolations were also written to comfort those who have suffered bereavement or any kind of loss. And obviously the best example of such a thing is Servius Sulpicius Rufus's letter to Cicero on the occasion of the death of his daughter Tullia, and Seneca the younger's to Marcia. So that's also something that I did not know, so it's a new information. And obviously this is something that's very basic, and it's already there in Boethys's Consolation of Philosophy. Philosophy herself consoles the author for his misfortune. And so that's the basically how you go ahead and you try to find out how the word actually has come from a really long uh, has come a really long way, and how different ways through which it has been used. So that's there. So that was today's word of the day. I hope you liked it. The little bit of, for me, the most interesting part was the letters of consolation. The most interesting part was because for me, I don't think if I have to use a word with death and grief, I know I think condolences. I think somehow, I think obviously consolation and condolences might be associated with each other, but I would use condolence. I offer my consolation. I don't know. I don't think anyone would say I offer my consolation, but there in Greco-Roman period, so that was there. And again, the whole of literature that comes around consolation, so that's there. Because while studying about trauma literature, I studied, I think, very limited. My knowledge about trauma literature is very limited, very introductory level, so I might have not come across this whole thing. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So that's the word of the day. I hoped you liked it. It added some kind of information to your life, and maybe it was interesting for you. For me, it was, because first of all, knowing where it comes from, old French, modern French, com becomes con, and solari, and Middle English connotation, all of that is interesting. And along with that, the philosophical concept itself is interesting, and it's so vast that I don't think it can be covered, or it can be really covered in a short span of time. I think things like those and concepts like those takes a really, if you wish to go into in depth, takes a really long time. So yeah, that's there. Bye bye, and I hope you liked it.